Hi everyone, good afternoon. We'll spend about the next 20 minutes talking to you about how we feel ITC Zero Trust can help secure your business. Now, I know there's probably a few amongst you who are probably thinking, oh no, not another presentation on Zero Trust and teaching me how that's going to cure all of my security woes. But please bear with me, and I'd like to assure you that we're going to give you the confidence that I'm going to focus on some realistic and pragmatic approaches to implementation of Zero Trust. And really kind of focusing on understanding why it's still an imperative for us to get to grips with Zero Trust, and we can remind ourselves why that's the case through the evolved threat landscape. Also to remind ourselves what is Zero Trust and what it isn't. I think that's quite important to spend some time thinking about. And then through real-world experience, through customer journeys and use cases, talking through some implementation pitfalls and common challenges, and how to, most importantly, overcome those challenges with some real practical steps, which I hope to leave you with, that can take that abstract Zero Trust vision into some concrete realities for you. So hope that sounds okay. So we really saw during the pandemic that the rapidly expanding attack surface occurred due to accelerated digital transformation. We hear about this, we know about this, and we know that through the increase in insider attacks and the focus on attacks on remote workers, this really forced a paradigm shift in our thinking about where that security perimeter lives. Whilst this was happening, bad actors were exploiting gaps in endpoint security and securing those identities at the new perimeter edge. IoT and edge providers have only recently been sort of moving away from trust but verify as a philosophy to really baking in and designing technologies to treat every identity and endpoint as the new security perimeter. And really we also saw, a massive explosion in the supply chain as an attack vector with devastating impact. So we need only remind ourselves of SolarWinds Orion to invoke some PTSD there. And just to share a couple of statistics from IBM and Microsoft's research papers around very strong business cases for adopting Zero Trust, and really to illustrate why the impact to businesses is real. So just to focus on for a minute, what is Zero Trust and what it isn't? So hopefully we can all agree Zero Trust is not a quick fix project. Zero Trust is an architecture, it's a set of principles. It's a framework, so that doesn't necessarily make it easy to implement, but that's the reality of what Zero Trust is. It's about the journey, it's not about the destination. So really, at the core tenet of Zero Trust is the fact that trust is not implicit within the network. Trust has to be earned, it has to be authorized and continually monitored post-authentication. The three key tenets of Zero Trust: verify explicitly, so really taking security decisions based on all of the data points available to you. So, for example, the identity, the location, device health, and so on. Using least privileged access, so using just-in-time, limiting access through just-in-time and just enough access, risk-based adaptive policies. And as we heard before from Wendy and others, assuming breach, assume you've been breached. So really trying to limit the blast radius through things like end-to-end encryption, through microsegmentation and continuous monitoring. So we know that these are the three core tenets. It all sounds eminently very sensible, but we know it's pretty hard to implement in reality. So let's take a look at and consider some of the pitfalls and challenges as we've seen in the real world. So really Zero Trust has been thought of traditionally in the network context. So really as a primary focus on upgrading and segmenting legacy infrastructure. Controlling access to physical assets, as the thinking went, would act as a proxy to pass on trust to users. But really that thinking is flawed because we know that the perimeter moved and users are also accessing resources outside the organization's network. Really an over-reliance on legacy infrastructure. So what we mean by that really is needing to digitally transform fully. So rebuilding, replacing, addressing that legacy infrastructure. The reality that Zero Trust is a journey, it's not a destination, which is obviously a misconception in many spaces that a one-time project, which could be complex, quite expensive, not easy to quantify in terms of value, will be the smoking gun to solve all your problems, which means that execs find it hard to get their heads around that. So lack of executive alignment doesn't line up the business for success. And no matter what a vendor will tell you, you cannot purchase Zero Trust in a box. It's not a one-time project. It's not a quick fix. There's a lot of misleading vendor lingo out there, which we don't think has helped. And also the thought that a total zero trust policy is achievable. Actually, that's nearly impossible to achieve. And the reason for that is at some point, you've got to start trusting others. Otherwise, your business is going to grind to a halt. Also, the lack of understanding of maturity. So the readiness of an organisation to get on that zero trust journey. So I think sometimes organisations need the headspace to get the fundamentals done, the fundamentals focused on and completed. We've heard about the supply chain, not addressing the supply chain through a zero trust context. So you might have spent a significant amount of time and effort on trying to lock down your kind of own environment, but then not applying that thinking to your supply chain. Why not? Also, I guess finally, we've heard, it's been advocated for many years that we need to have highly trusted networks, but we want you to do zero trust. We don't make it easy for ourselves in the cyber industry at times. So really the big question is, where do you get started? So we at ITC recognise that every business context, risk profile, appetite for risk and risks are different, are unique to that customer's context. So therefore we think it's a pretty good idea to start with an identity maturity assessment. And what that can allow you to do is focus on the risks that are relative to your business when deploying a zero trust, so some continual iterative steps to start you on your zero trust journey. So that could be phishing as a key risk to your business. That could be insider risk, etc. And then that will allow you, once you've done a maturity assessment, perhaps with a partner, to develop a roadmap to look at some quick wins and to focus on the biggest return on some quick, small projects that can provide value back to the board. And then if you really focus on perhaps on some simple steps, such as creating an inventory of assets and focusing on those risks, then you can really start to build that cultural mindset of continual improvement within your organisation. So an example of a maturity model, kind of 3 phases of a maturity model, just to give you some questions perhaps that you could even answer yourselves. I won't take a straw poll, just for you to start considering where you might be on your own journey. So perhaps starting with, maybe you're just sort of getting started. Are you reducing password risk by using strong authentication methods such as MFA or single sign-on for cloud apps? Perhaps that's where you are. You're just about to complete that as a project and move forwards to a more advanced phase of maturity. Perhaps you're using real-time analytics to look at user behavior and use that to make smarter decisions in your network. Or perhaps you're kind of far over on the right-hand side in an optimizing phase and you're dynamically enforcing policies post-authorization and able to prevent further violations. I think if you're answering yes to that question yourself and quietly nodding to yourself, then we look up at you in awe and with great respect, because that's quite an achievement to get there. But really, I think we see organizations as somewhere between 1 and 2, and in honesty, probably closer to 1. But that's okay. I think you need to cut a baseline, take some steps and start to iterate and move forwards. So in terms of some service offerings where ITC can help you on your zero trust journey, you've heard me talk a lot about starting with a maturity assessment. So really that's taking an objective view, a snapshot of your organisation against a set of consistent identity and access management controls, and then using that to give you a view of your posture relative to your risks, and then creating a roadmap of quick wins and more longer-term improvements to see your maturity improve over time. An identity cleanse or an identity health check is something that we offer, which can be part of a maturity assessment or as a standalone vehicle, a very quick project, a quick view to give you an understanding of the health and quality of identity data from your existing identity providers and identity sources. So for example, identifying over-permissioned accounts or orphan accounts, which sometimes have highly elevated privileges but are not assigned to a user, but can be very dangerous from an attack vector perspective, and other spurious accounts which may have accumulated over time in your business. So a very useful vehicle, the identity health check. And then we heard Wendy, Arno, Mark talk about continuous monitoring. So post-authentication, where a lot of organizations have struggled to manage and control user access. Again, it's a continuous process. It doesn't just happen once and you forget about it. You need to go and see who's in your environment and what they're doing on a continuous basis. So partnering with MSSPs around MXDR solutions to give you that visibility is probably a very good idea. Just to give you some examples of where ITC has taken the zero trust sort of abstract philosophy and turned it into implementation for a few of our customers, where we have worked with the local city council starting with an identity maturity assessment. It quickly became apparent that they needed to have visibility and control of their on-prem users and which applications they were accessing. So we helped build a privileged access management platform for them on-prem, and now we're continuing to work with them on onboarding additional applications into this PAM environment. So again, working with them in iterative steps on that journey of zero trust. We also we are working with an online grocery delivery company, a FTSE 100 retail company, again starting with a discovery vehicle, starting with a maturity assessment. Became very clear to them that they needed to integrate AD groups to the cloud, and again providing them visibility and control. We also work with another Microsoft partner, Silverfort. And while we're very proud to be starting our journey in partnership with Silverfort, because the platform what it offers is secure authentication for all resources, whether that be on-prem or in the cloud, into previously unseen areas, into blind spots. So, for example, legacy apps, service accounts, local administrator access to workstation service file shares. So typically resources that have been very difficult to authenticate from an MFA perspective. The Silverfort solution allows that to happen. So, I mean, just a couple of statistics there. We can see that a lot of organisations, and Wendy mentioned this in her talk, are finding it very difficult to comprehensively apply MFA across their estate. And if less than a quarter are able to actually control the risk around service accounts, which tend to have spurious security or no security, then that's a big problem. But the Silverfort solution in partnership with ITC allows secure authentication to be applied across those accounts. We're currently working with the London Borough Council in proof of concept to roll out that very solution. And finally, I think we can agree, hopefully, that zero trust is an imperative. It's an architecture and framework that needs to be distilled into a cultural mindset shift, which looks like continual improvements, focusing on quick wins, doing a maturity assessment, identifying the quick wins, and showing the biggest return back to the board and continuing henceforwards. I think striking a very pragmatic balance of risk versus control is key, so that you don't stumble with regards to a big complex program of work, and really starting with some simple steps, and perhaps being very careful in your choice of a partner to help you on that journey. That's all from me for now. We'll be on the panel towards the end of the session to take questions, but for now, thank you for listening, and I'll hand back to Mark.